We just recorded a whole episode that we forgot to press record for. Can we recreate any of that conversation? Or are we just moving on?
Dead.
Oh,
Moving
man.
on. I felt I didn't want to get into the abortion thing because I'm going to rabbit trail off onto that.
Yeah, so we gotta. We gotta introduce ourselves. Jack Burris, and I'm Thom Jennings.
Hey, and this is episode 6.1.
No, yes, we just recorded a whole episode that I forgot to press record, and it was about teen pregnancy.
So no big deal though. We didn't say much.
It was such a good episode too. We're gonna have to re-record that at some point.
Are we recording now?
Yeah, we're recording now.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we could try to recreate it. We should set a timer anyway. Alexa, set a timer for 20 minutes.
20 minutes, starting now.
All right.
That's how the professionals
That's
do
our
it.
third. It's our third host, Alexa. Oh, I got to be careful when I say her name because she always wants to say something to me afterwards.
Right, and then we'll get copyrighted.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you can copyright the name Alexa.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Alexa and Siri always are arguing and bickering in my house. Yeah, Jack's give me a look. Anyhow, welcome to What to Do with Your Old Explicit
I'm just trying
Content.
to figure out the route we want to go with this 6.2 podcast.
Yeah, see, we had such a good one. I think we just try to recreate the conversation that we were having.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about teen pregnancy. Yeah, we got to get the mic close to your face here.
How's that? Any better?
That's better.
Okay.
So we were talking about. I'll let you introduce the topic, and then we'll go.
Well, the topic is the topic is how do you respond when someone says, "Oh, by the way, my 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old daughter is pregnant."
14, 15, or 16?
Whatever. I mean, your teenage daughter.
Right.
Well, I'm not trying to pinpoint anybody, but because it's happened a number of times where people are like, "Oh, my daughter's pregnant," and they're 14 or 15 or 14 and then 15 years old and pregnant.
Yeah.
Which is, not something you can take lightly. Like, how do you respond to that?
I believe that you have found what my mother used to call the darned if you do, darned if you don't scenario, right?
Yes, I do believe you do. I think the whole situation is the darned if you do, darned if you didn't.
Right. Yes, because you can't really say, "Oh, that's awful," even though to some degree it's a difficult situation.
Because you're just telling that person that their grandchild is going to be awful, or the situation is somehow awful.
Yeah.
Because of their grandchild, which it will not be, by the way. It will be difficult.
It may not be difficult.
It may be beautiful.
Depending on the circumstance.
It may be beautiful, but it may be difficult.
Yeah.
And where was I going with that one? So you don't want to say it's difficult,
right?
Or that it's going to be awful, but at the same time, you don't want to paint a false front and say, "Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful news that your 10th grade educated daughter is pregnant. That's going to help her extremely as she goes forward in life."
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. It's one of those weird, and it has these societal implications as well, because you don't necessarily want to encourage teen pregnancy, but you also don't want to alienate a friend by saying.
Well, you also have to consider, in a lot of cases, you have to step back a little bit and try to look at why they contacted you and why they felt like they needed to tell you. Because, like you said, you're a trusted friend, or you're somebody they can, out of the few people that they can talk to without feeling condemnation or judgment instantly.
Or maybe they're people that like to be murdered. I mean, I've known people like that where they literally will say things to people in hopes that they will, say something bad, so then they could turn around and go, "Oh, look at you sitting in judgment.
You turned your back on me just like everybody else."
Like everybody, well, it's me against the world because...
Well, then it becomes the challenge of not being that guy.
Yeah.
So the only thing I've come up with a couple times now, was to quietly sit and reflect and then come up with the responses. Well, children are a beautiful miracle. or some variation thereof.
Some variation.
Because that much is true.
Yes. Yes, the child, again, is the innocent party in this scenario.
So let's not speak curses on the child before the child's even born.
But the circumstance of the child being on the way is really the problem, but yet you can't call the child the problem, even though the child's arrival is the problem. That's darn if you do, darn if you don't.
Everything
the catch-22.
Everything about the situation is.
It really
You have your child, and you're going to be in for difficulty. If you don't have the child and decide to go through with an abortion, you're in for a world of difficulty.
Yeah.
Because people want to act like it's not, that there's no consequences there to that either, and which is false. If anybody's listening, there's 3 of you listening right now. One of you just got pissed off and shut off.
Oh, did they?
But, yeah, I think they did.
Do you know who's not listening?
What?
Our family members. Yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
In case if you go back into the archives, you'll find out that we have a bounty for our family members.
Yeah.
And none of them has claimed it yet. We're not even going to say what the bounty is. So if you're a family member, you got to go back to the other previous episodes.
Oh, good one. I like that.
There you go. Yeah, let's make them chase it down.
Yeah.
You have to tell us what the bounty is, not that you
just make you work
it.
for it, folks.
Yeah, as we recorded previously, for people that listening to this,
for those of you that weren't sitting in the room with us, when we recorded the one we didn't push the
first
button
one that I forgot to press record for. And I had a child at 17, and when I use that expression, I usually get a lot of judgment too. They're like, "You didn't have the child."
You still look like you're due, buddy.
Wow, man, nice. I am. I'm getting. I am fighting the fat battle, but that could be a whole other podcast in and of itself.
Yeah, but that Santa Claus thing, you got it.
Yeah, I got to keep that Santa Claus thing going. So. So I was 17, 16 when she became pregnant, 17 when my son Tim was born. So I've lived it. And because of that, I think people have come to me and asked my thoughts and opinions on this particular topic, because even though we're talking 1980, well, he was born in 1983. Wow. So, yeah, I know, wasn't that crazy?
Like 100 years ago, wasn't it?
How long ago was it? It was a year after I saw my first Todd Rundgren concert, which was 1982. That's how I tag it. Yes.
Most people go by deaths.
Yeah.
Or the 9/11. Tom does by his Todd Rundgren concert.
Yeah. But my parents were apoplectic. It's a crazy word that you heard for the second time today. Especially my mom.
His mom went cattywampus.
Yeah. I'm trying to think my mom.
We're just trying to slip in
the first time my mom met Tim was, trying to think how old he was. He was like 7 or 8 months old, and I brought him into her work. And I don't remember why we happened to be in the area, but I brought him in, and she saw him, and she had the weirdest look on her face. And then I guess she got upset that I brought him to work. At least, one sister told me that, probably my sister Karen. Well, I don't want to pick on my sister Karen because we don't really speak, but when the term Karen came out, we all were like, "Oh, yeah, we've got a Karen in our family." Yeah. And Karen, you are eligible for the $15.
Oh, you gave away listening. You gave away.
Oh,
shoot!
The dollar amount. Not yours though. Not your dollar amount. True. I can always bleep that out. But and my dad. I think the first time my dad saw Tim, he literally just walked by and just paid no attention to him. He was so upset. It took him years to get over it. And then my father was really close with my son Tom, who was born years later and had his name, which is part of the reason that we named him Tom. Even yesterday, somebody was asking me about my kids and the fact that my second one is named Tom Jr. and not the first one. I get a lot of crap about that.
I've never thought about that before.
Oh my gosh, all the time.
Is that how it's supposed to work? You name the first one?
You're supposed to name the first one. Yeah. Even my son Tim gave me serious grief about that. My Trevor who's my youngest, had the funniest response to it, because Tim, we were out there. And he says, my name should have been Tom. And why didn't you name me Tom instead of him? And Trevor said, well, I don't know, maybe because he was 16 years old. I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. You don't always make the greatest decisions. Yeah, he was 16. Yeah. Dad was still riding a bike back then, Tim. You want him to think about what name he's going to give his kids? So, but that was a thing. So, but yeah, it's... And again, my parents were so upset. They were upset at the situation, and in some ways, I guess it denied them a real relationship with their own grandchild. But you can't win because you don't want to. It's not the kid's fault. Why do you not like the kid for being born when it's the parents that were the ones that made the decision to make the kid? So, but I had people in my life said there were some people that were like, oh, you'll be fine and you'll be able to, raise the child. And my grand plan was to quit high school and work full time, which I worked for these great major corporations like Taco Bell and Arby's. Friendly's was later, but yeah, Arby's. I used to have to clean the cigarette butts out of the parking lot in the morning and clean the toilets while high school kids would come in for lunch and they'd look at me like, oh, look at you, Mr. Other high school kid who's not in high school working at Arby's for lunch. It was horrible. Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
I wish if I had it to do over again. No, I can't do it over again. But yeah, my point
There's
being,
a lot of things in life like that.
Well, there really is. For sure.
We got back into we were talking in episode 6.0, which none of you will ever hear.
Yeah.
That
the air episode.
Yeah, the elusive ghost episode. That really part of the problem is the shock waves of the pregnancy, whether it be, the guilt of not being able to handle things the way you wished you could as you get older in hindsight, or not having handled things the way you wished you would have when you get older, which the reality is, we talked earlier about, well, if, birth control was utilized better, it would eliminate the problem. But the problem isn't the birth control. The problem is the sex in the first place.
Yeah.
Which, we were talking is incredibly difficult in this day and age for people. And I know it's unpopular, so you don't need to write us, and you couldn't anyway because we haven't told you where to write.
They could. There's an email address in the notes.
I don't care. I won't read it.
Well, we have a very sexually charged society, and
well, yeah, because sexually everything's okay now.
Yeah, it's weird. It's very different. I don't know how to put this diplomatically, so maybe I'll just say it, because isn't that what we're going to be known for?
There's only 2 people listening anyway.
Okay, well, when I was in school in the 1980s, the slut was not desirable. You know what I mean? Like the slut was the girl that would be slut shamed, and they were the girl that every guy was with. It was never a girl that was going to be your girlfriend. It was just the girl that you would fool around with. And it didn't even necessarily mean, full on sex. It could just be the girl that made out with all the guys or whatever. But still, to be the slut was not a desired position. And usually you had one or two. And I dated one girl who probably was considered the school slut. Not my son's mother. I want to be very clear about that. But and she was a nice girl, and I think she had she wound up cheating on me, so that slut. But you know what I mean. But anyhow, the slutty girls were the ones you couldn't have a relationship with. It wasn't like as celebrated. Whereas today, there's a certain attitude, even at the high school level, because I teach high school, and I've heard this from other people that teach high school, where the slut is more embraced, and they look at it as a form of
passage
feminism.
Yeah.
No, it's like the woman is utilizing her body to control the narrative, and she does that by being overtly sexual. And to some degree, I get it, because men tend to be very narrow-minded when it comes to sex, so women can exert themselves in that respect. But the flip side of that is now I believe you're starting to see more sexual assaults and things like that. And especially with better birth control, it's easier to have sex and not have kids. I think teen pregnancy is probably down from when I was a kid.
Well, it's down, but it's hard to tell anyway, because obviously birth control is a lot more accessible nowadays and accepted, and abortion is a lot more readily accessible now, and now you have the mail order abortion too, or like a day after pill type of thing, or even much later than that.
Yeah, but most people, like I think you were alluding to before, nobody thinks to themselves, "Oh, your kid shouldn't have been having sex." They would always say, "Oh, well, your kid's not using birth control, right?"
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
which we can't. We're trying to back up the horse and the cart here. I get that.
Yeah. My parents were not happy that I was having sex before marriage.
Right, but
that's how it was back then.
If nobody talks to you about it the entire time, it gives you a foundation to build on that shows the things that will come from that type of decision making. Then what do you have to go by? I said in our last episode that I said my groundbreaking moral advice that was given to me by my stepfather when I was growing up was have sex with whomever you wanted to, just don't do drugs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did
My
both.
wife looks at me and she goes, "Well, no wonder you're so screwed up."
Yeah, I did both.
I did not do drugs.
Yeah, I did plenty of drugs. I didn't have a lot of sex. So.
And I was fairly selective on the sexual end of it for the most part, too. I mean, not as selective as I should have been or as abstinent as I should have been. But, again, we're not going to back up the horse and the cart here.
Yeah, and I can't imagine if once because before, I don't remember if I mentioned in this recording or the previous one that we didn't record, but I was determined to be abstinent until I was married because that meant something to me. And even to this day, there's still there was always a strong desire to find that one person. And I never wanted to be. I wasn't one of those guys that could just go out and get laid.
Right.
There were a lot of. I still have friends like that. I have coworkers like that. That's their sole goal is to get involved in these casual sexual relationships.
Yeah, that is.
I can't do it.
That has never enticed me either.
I just can't do it. I don't know if I necessarily am sounded judgy, but I'm not. I mean, there are people that can maneuver it quite well. It shocks me, but I just can't do it.
You know what I've attributed that to a number of times, and I've used this with a few different people, is orange juice.
Really?
Yes. Because once you drink orange juice and somebody says, "Okay, now go drink some cranberry juice," and you're like, "But it's not orange juice." So you want the orange juice again.
Yeah.
And you know what orange juice tastes like. So grabbing a glass of milk is not the same thing. As far as,
or cranberry juice.
Or cranberry juice. It's not the same thing as far as like once you, as they use the term in drinking, break the seal, so to speak. When you do when you go out drinking with friends, they used to say, "Don't break the seal." Like,
and women that don't know this expression, or men for that matter, it means once you pee the first time, you're going to want to pee in every 5 minutes.
Right. So you just don't break the seal. It's kind of like that with sex. Unless you're way different than I am, which it could be. Once you've experienced that nothing else tastes like orange juice.
No, I mean, that makes sense because I think in terms of relationships too, is that if you've had a relationship that was consummated and then you break up with that person, the next person that you date, until you consummate that relationship, it's going to be, I think it's more difficult to maneuver. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, that's the scenario that I would usually give that analogy in about the orange juices. Again, most of us, very few people that I know don't have sex before they get married. I mean, that's just the way it is nowadays.
I don't know if I know anybody.
I do know a number of people, but they're all in like their 80s.
Yeah.
But to their credit, they've been married for 65 years.
Right.
So that they'll tell you how much they love each other, and you can see that they absolutely adore each other. But most of the time, especially with the culture of the boomers that we had to deal with, or like that with the divorce rate and stuff, that even fed into the next generation, it sends a lot of people out there after they've consummated those relationships looking into another relationship, and yet you're supposed to tell them not to consummate it until they're married, or whatever your barometer is for the time would be, and it's pretty darn near impossible.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of parenting, you kind of have to figure out a way to let your kid. I think. I mean, if I did anything right as a parent, at least to two of my kids, because I didn't really raise my oldest one due to circumstances, but is kind of helping them maneuver relationships. Like, what is a healthy relationship? And you can have a healthy sexual relationship. Don't get me wrong. And you may be able to have a healthy sexual relationship in your high school years. But at the end of the day, you still need to have the foundation to be able to treat a partner.
Because when you get old and chubby like us, the sexual relationship is not as important anymore.
Oh, for sure. Uh-oh. Alexa does not want to hear us talk about this anymore. Alexa, stop. Well, that's our 20 minutes, but we were just starting to get started.
We were just getting rolling.
We're just rolling. It's like we had this conversation twice, which we kind of did. Anyhow, if you like the show, Jack and I are both looking to quit our full-time jobs.
We're looking for
validation.
Yes.
Anything. All right.
On the back.
Until next time. I'm Tom.
I'm Jack. John Jack.
Talk to you soon.